This week, the United States announced that Israel will be joining a list of countries where the U.S. will dramatically ease the requirements for Israelis to obtain a visa to enter the United States. Good news potentially there, although it's not all sunshine and roses. We're going to get into that. Along with Canada, the Canadian Parliament gives a standing ovation to a former Nazi. Yeah, we're going to get into that too. I'm Ben. This is the Israel Guys.
طب اسمع دير بالك وعزتوني وعزتوني.
Those were some Arab teenagers who tried to throw a pipe bomb over the Gaza border fence into Israel, and let's just say things did not go exactly as they had planned for. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Today we mark an important and joyful moment for all citizens in Israel. We have worked on this for many years, close to a decade, even more so in the last year, that when we passed extensive legislation in the Knesset, legislation that enabled the legal basis for this move. Those who want to visit the USA will no longer have to wait months to get an appointment. That was a quote from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the occasion of announcing that Israel will be officially joining the USA's visa waiver program. This is from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Israel's entry into the visa waiver program represents a critical step forward in our strategic partnership with Israel that will further strengthen long-standing people-to-people engagement, economic cooperation, and security coordination between our two countries. So, Israel is officially entering into this agreement. I think there's like 41 countries already on this list. A lot of Israelis are really excited about it. There's already a lot of travel plans going into place. Previous to this, Israel was still in the status where Israelis had to apply for a visa to go into the United States, and it could take, 2-3 months for them to get approved, not get approved, whatever. It was kind of a hassle to make that travel happen. This is from the Jerusalem Post. The VWP does not go into effect until November 30th. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said in a statement, today's designation is not the end of the process, it said, adding that it would keep its eye on Israel's reciprocal treatment of Palestinians with U.S. citizenship. It's a very key phrase. We're going to get back to that here in a minute. Israel's entry into the visa waiver program does not mean that Israeli citizens without U.S. visas can head for the Ben Gurion Airport now for a quick flight to the United States. Hallett said there is a 72-hour electronic procedure that Israelis must complete before boarding such U.S.-bound flights, she said. So, instead of waiting 2-3 months for a visa and going through all this different things, supposedly once all this kind of goes through, they're very careful to say this is not in place now. They're starting this process. But once they get all this implementation into place, you should be able just to apply for a visa online and probably get approval within 72 hours to enter America for Israelis. But there was a warning that was issued by Jonathan Pollard this week, and he called the program a Trojan horse. Who is Jonathan Pollard? Most of you probably already know, but he was a U.S. intelligence analyst in the 1980s inside of the United States, and he passed sensitive information to the Israeli government. It's a very controversial topic inside of Israel, also outside of Israel, especially in the United States, as to whether he was a full-out traitor, Israeli spy, a lot of these types of things. A lot of people, in the United States see him as a spy and a traitor. A lot of people also see him as passing information, like the information that he passed, being information that the U.S. was supposed to give Israel anyway, and refused to for some reason inside of the security cooperations, the intelligence cooperations that Israel and the United States had together, but were withholding for some reason. There's a lot of people that make the case that the information that he gave, the U.S. was supposed to give anyway, and for some reason didn't. And it was very important to Israel's security information in regard to Israel's Arab neighbors. But regardless, I'm not here to make a judgment on Jonathan Pollard. He spent 30 years, by the way. He was given a life sentence in American prison, spent 30 years in prison, only got out in 2015, and finally was able to make Aliyah back to Israel in 2020. And also, a little bit of a side note, it's a mystery as to why he spent that much time in prison. Generally, people that give intelligence information to friendly countries either get a slap on the wrist, a couple of months in prison, a demotion, 2 to 4 years in prison for this type of thing before. I know he gave a lot of really sensitive information, but 30 years generally is a sentence that's reserved for like really hardcore espionage cases with enemy countries, like countries we're openly at war with, especially when there was the deaths of resulted in the deaths of American citizens and stuff like that. So for Pollard to get 30 years, a full-on life sentence, and for him to serve the entirety of that sentence with no parole is really kind of crazy. There's either anti-Semitism involved or a lot more that we don't know about behind the scenes, but either way, it's pretty crazy. But Pollard obviously knows a lot when it comes to intelligence and the U.S. government and all these things. He did an article in the Jerusalem Post where he said, on the surface, it seems rather innocuous, but it's basically allowing the story of the entry of individuals who are not appropriate for Israel. He went on to highlight several key issues, including the security risks associated with BDS activists and Palestinian American students who might hold anti-Semitic views. It's because the people that we're letting in are not appropriate, he said. There are security reasons, both in terms of people like the BDS boycott, divestment, and sanctions in Israel, activists that are already in the country, just gallivanting around Israel and the territories doing God knows what. The thing that really got me angry about this chutzpah of the American government is to demand that they station observers at our port of entry, which we just saw that from the statement from the U.S. State Department, to see whether or not we're discriminating against Palestinian Americans. This was horrifying. So what he's referring to is that Israel is pretty strict on their borders because they have to be in regards to terrorists coming into the state of Israel. So they're very strict with a lot of Palestinians that enter. Obviously, Palestinians have fairly free Arabs, Israeli Arabs have fairly free access to the state of Israel. But when it comes to that, Israel has to be very careful with not letting terrorists in, funneling cash, arms, committing terrorist attacks, those types of things through the border. And so since the State Department specifically said one of the criterion for this staying in place is for monitoring entry for Palestinians into Israel, the assumption very well could be made is that the State Department's going to put pressure on Israel to let a lot more Palestinians through, to not do as strict background checks, security checks, that type of thing, which could be very concerning for the state of Israel. So interesting stuff there, something to definitely keep an eye on. In a minute, we're going to get into something really crazy that just happened in the Canadian Parliament. But first, Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria is Israel's biblical heartland. Unfortunately, hardly any of the 2.5 million tourists that visit Israel every year come to the place that most of the world calls the West Bank. The reality is that more than 80% of the Bible is either written or occurred here, and we consider it to be one of Israel's best kept secret gems. We don't know of any Israeli tour that focuses exclusively on Judea and Samaria other than our Heartland Experience. 2 parts tour, 1 part volunteer program. The Heartland Experience is designed to introduce you to the land and people that call this place home in an unforgettable and completely unique way. We've gotten incredible reviews from the previous Heartland Experience programs that we hosted in 2022, and our next trip is November 27th through December 10th. To find out more and to apply for this trip, visit serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description below. If you love God, Israel, and an unforgettable experience, consider joining us for our Heartland Experience program November 27th through November 10th. Sign up today at serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description below. So the Canadian Parliament hosted President Vladimir Zelensky from Ukraine in their to speak to Parliament, and this happened.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Okay, so as part of this ceremony with Vladimir Zelensky, the Speaker of the Canadian House of Commons, Anthony Rota, honored this 98-year-old Canadian war hero. As you can see, there's a standing ovation from the Parliament in Canada. He was wiping tears away. It was a wonderful moment, which is all fine and dandy until you find out that this guy was actually a full-on Nazi. Like an actual Nazi. It came out afterwards that he served in the notorious 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. So that guy actually served in the SS and a division that committed a lot of war crimes, including destroying, obviously, participation in a lot of Holocaust things with murdering Jews. But also, on top of that, destroying Polish villages, murdering Polish civilians, children, women, all that kind of thing. Who knows what this guy was into personally? Hopefully, for his sake, it wasn't the worst of the worst. But still, he was part of this unit, and the Canadian Parliament gave him a standing ovation. So, yeah, not a good look. They have been working absolute overtime to backpedal from this whole disgusting arrangement. The Canadian Speaker of the House of Commons, Anthony Rota, who introduced this guy, who brought him in, he is resigned this week as a result of it. He said, "No one in this House is above any of us. Therefore, I must step down as your Speaker. I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities." No kidding, including to the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to Nazi survivors in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions, he added. Also, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, our favorite person, issued an apology as well.
In a few moments, I will address the House in front of all Canadians, in front of Jewish people here and around the world, and Ukrainians, to offer Parliament's unreserved apologies for what happened on Friday. The Speaker was solely responsible for the invitation and recognition of this man and has wholly accepted that responsibility and stepped down. This was a mistake that has deeply embarrassed Parliament and Canada.
Also, as a result, Poland announced that they're taking steps to extradite this guy back to Poland to stand trial, which obviously that probably won't be extremely straightforward, but kudos to Poland for trying. I really appreciate the effort to maybe try to make this happen. And as we talked about before, this is a real embarrassment for Ukraine because this keeps happening. Ukraine has, especially the Ukrainian military, has deep Nazi ties that go a long way back. Obviously, not every unit or every person, but this has been an awkward thing for the West to deal with, for sure. Units still flying Nazi flags and stuff like that inside of Ukraine, even to this day. So anyway, lesson to Canada, be very careful with this type of thing. Kudos to Poland. Hopefully something might happen in bringing this guy to justice if he is responsible for war crimes, actually. Don't forget to subscribe and get the conversation going down below. We love hearing from you as always, and share this around. We really appreciate you helping us get the word out of this channel to get it beyond the spheres that we already reach. We're trying to reach as many people as possible with the news about Israel. Don't forget to tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every day, Monday through Friday, with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.